Welcome back to another Free Agents podcast. As always, it's Baz here. I'm with Miami Heat fan Rigonis Haslam. And on the mixer again, we got Choc Gilgis Alexander from Oklahoma City Thunder.
What's up?
Let's go. Today we're going to review the playoffs. We've got a spicy take around the trades currently that have happened in the NBA and the history of the NBA. And we're also going to review the playoffs. As always, we have the 24-second news with Choc. Let's go.
All right, so it's been a very eventful week in the NBA. I'm not going to go over that right now. We'll cover that off later on. We've lost a few key figures in the NBA this week. Firstly, the ex-Arizona Wildcats coach Lute Olson has passed away, and also ex-Blazer and NBA All-Star Cliff Robinson passed away today, age 53. So prayers out to their families. Brody returns today against the Thunder after OKC locked up the series at 2-2, so it's going to take some pressure off James Harden in the closing stages of the game. And some big injuries this week. Kristaps, Damian Lillard, and Aaron Gordon all suffering injuries. All three players are out for the remainder of the playoffs. Aaron Gordon's also been eliminated today anyway. And lastly, congratulations to Giannis Antetokounmpo for being named the Defensive Player of the Year. Woo!
Yay, Yanni.
Was he even in your ranking to pick him?
I just didn't. I always felt like if he was going to get it, then he wasn't going to get MVP. So now I'm feeling more confident with my LeBron James pick for MVP. So
I thought he was going to get Defensive Player of the Year.
I thought it was going to be AD.
his stats are better, but I just feel like the way AD has played defense is better than Giannis.
Yeah,
The eye test, I think, is better for AD than it was for Giannis. But his stats, his metrics are definitely better than AD's. But I just think the eye test, I had AD.
Fair enough.
Be interesting to see.
Bass has no comment for that.
Yeah. Well, he's getting every time I look at the box score, I expect him to have 13 rebounds at halftime.
Yeah, but you got Brook Lopez on
I
that
know,
roster.
exactly. Anyway, moving on to the content, the interesting stuff. The NBA is back after a short postponement. There's a protest from the players. Rig, how did that unfold? Do you want to go into that a bit more?
Well, we saw the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think the spicy part of this is that the Milwaukee Bucks didn't consult any other team when they made this decision to to stop play and postpone their match. So I think what we heard was rumors that the Clippers and the Lakers, LeBron in particular, walked out of the meeting that the NBA players had. I think that was misconstrued, though. I think the reasoning is I think they were upset that the Bucks had gone and done something without consulting the rest of the players and the teams in the bubble.
That's right. Initially, the reports were that LeBron and the Lakers and Kawhi and the Clippers had walked out after saying they want to cancel the season. But I think you're right. I think it was a miscommunication there.
And I can see that. I think especially for long-term standing players, I think the Bucks could have consulted players like CP3, LeBron
James, yeah.
all the guys who've been around for long enough and who are big advocates to see if this is what would be the best for the NBA, for every player involved, considering how much they've given up to be in the bubble and trying to finish the playoffs.
And CP3 is the head of the Players Union as well, so he should have been consulted first up.
If LeBron James had done that and not told anybody, do you think players would be upset?
I think players would be upset. You just wouldn't hear about it.
Yeah.
Again, it's still his league. What he does kind of governs what everyone else does. And I think that's why the news was LeBron's the reason why it's all stopped. When we really know now, we're starting to hear now that it wasn't so much that LeBron wanted it stopped. He was just felt like he'd been forced to make a decision and he was not happy about it.
He didn't have time to think about what was going on and what the way moving forward was.
And it seemed like it was very rushed from the Bucks. I know that they had their own agenda and they spoke to the governor of Wisconsin. So I think obviously they wanted to do some sort of stuff for the social change and reform. But I just think that obviously the rest of the NBA or some of the other prominent NBA players would have liked to have had a say before they decided to boycott the game.
Yeah. Look, it should have been, they should have spoke about it with all the other teams, especially giving the heads up to, the Magic as well.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting everyone go out and court because the Magic was still warming up.
And Aaron Gordon was on court ready to go, and he was told by the refs.
And so that's it. I think it's just something as little as that. Obviously, what they're trying to do is fantastic, but I think just give a heads up. That's all it was.
Yeah, 100%. So now the playoffs are back. They started this morning, and we'll just quickly review the playoffs. We've had a few days off from some games. So the Oklahoma City series and the Rocket series is actually tied up 2-2, and they're playing at this moment in time as we speak.
Yeah, and Russell Westbrook back. I think that's going to make a big difference. For me, I just think the Rockets are just going to run away with it in the end. OKC's put up a nice fight the last couple of games, but I just think with Russell Westbrook back, it's going to be pretty much all but over.
Yeah, When the Rockets were up 2-0, I honestly thought it was going to become 3-0.
Yeah, it could have possibly been a sweep, to be honest. The way that OKC was playing was extremely poor, and the Rockets were on fire, shooting very well from three. But a couple poor shooting performances has seen OKC get back into it. Be it not very convincing wins, both overtime and in small margins, but still 2-2. But I just think the Rockets are going to run away with it at the end.
You take the wins if you're Oklahoma City. I think the Rockets will win today's game, and then I think it'll just be all game over come 2 days' time, 3 days' time when they play again. And then later on today, we have the Lakers versus the Blazers. The Lakers are currently up 3-1. Dame Lillard's gone home, as you heard from Choc.
Well, I'd like to see all the people who came at me in the comments of Instagram. I'm like, where are you now? Because the game, it's over. I'd be shocked if the Blazers win another game. And it's not that I think the Blazers played extremely well in that first game. I just think the Lakers played poorly off the back of the poor shooting performances they had in the early part of the regular season of the bubble.
I think their shooting percentage in the first game was around about the 30% mark, where if you look at the last couple of games, their shooting percentage has been up around about the 48, 49% mark. So they're shooting a lot better.
And people like KCP and Danny Green are finally starting to see the ball go through the net. They were shooting extremely poor in the early games of this playoff series. So, again, sweep might have been a bit spicy, but let's be honest, they only get one game, and that's all they're going to get.
Yeah, like winning only one game for them is under expectations, because I had them maybe winning 2 and taking it, and Lakers in 6.
Well, the Lakers are playing as I expected they should have been playing.
Yeah, but I still think the Blazers have the team and the capability to win at least 2 games.
You're right, but the Blazers shouldn't be upset with what they're doing, considering the season of injuries they've had, to actually even get in the playoffs and actually be taking a game from the Lakers is very impressive.
And making it competitive.
It's just a frustrating way to see the season end and the series end, hopefully with Dame not too injured. Obviously, I'm not sure what the go is with his knee. He's going to get further testing at MRIs as he leaves the bubble. Hopefully nothing will affect him next season. But a bit disappointing to see them bow out with Zach Collins and him being injured.
Yeah, because Dame's not the first person to leave with a knee injury. As most of us may know, Kristaps Porzingis actually has a meniscus tear in his right knee. And he's gone home as well, and that series is tied up. That series goes to the Clippers so far, with Clippers up 3-2. I think that's going to be...
Well, I think that's it. Like, I really like Luka Doncic, and I think he's doing fantastic stuff against the Clippers. But I think without having Kristaps Porzingis by his side, it's going to be tough for him to carry not a bunch of scrubs, but let's be honest, a bunch of role players against the Clippers and the 9-person depth they have on that roster. But I do think that you just don't rush KP back. There's no need to. Even if you, let's just say they even do win this series and get through, there's no need for him to play. They're not going to get that far at this stage, and they're so young, and they're building such a good roster. And he also missed 18 months previously.
Yeah. I'm actually concerned for KP because he tore his ACL in his other knee. Now he's got a meniscus tear in his right knee, being a guy of 7'2".
7'2", 3". And that's the thing, tall guys get a lot of these sort of leg injuries and knee injuries, and it can really derail a career. Greg Oden comes to mind straight away.
Yeah, and then Andrew Bynum's had the problem as well before. It'd be one of those things where KP might just come back and then get injured again, then you might never see him play again.
And that's it. So you can't really take that risk considering the position they're in. With everything that's going on at the moment, I leave him out. See if Luka can maybe steal another win, push it to 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets injured again moving forward into the future, it might be time to move on from the KP.
Well, that's it. It's a short but injured-riddled stint with the Mavs. So hopefully he's okay and they can put a young team together next season.
Yeah, and the series has a lot of entertainment back and forth, and I'm quite surprised by this. Utah winning 3 to Nuggets 2.
This is the best series in the bubble, by far. Without it, I wrote Utah off before this series. They were playing extremely poor, but Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert played extremely well, and Mike Conley and Jingles have really filled in alongside them. And the Nuggets don't look like the Nuggets. They seem to be struggling a little bit.
They are struggling, but they're coming to life a bit from the last 2 games.
Well, Jamal Murray's on fire.
Jamal Murray is killing it.
I think he had something like 92 points and 0 turnovers over 2 games.
Last 2 games, 92 points, 50 in Game 4 and 42 in Game 5.
With no turnovers. Let's put that. That's unbelievable. That's incredible.
Because just off the record, I actually raised this with Rig previously. If Jamal Murray could actually be an All-Star next season.
I think he could be if he was in the East. Unfortunately, there's too many guards in the West that are better than him right now that would get in over him.
So in the West, you've got Harden, Westbrook.
You've got CP3, you've got Mitchell. There's 4 already. You've got other players like
Paul George.
You got up and coming players like Shai Gilgeous. if he played like this for a consistent
And then
amount of
Dame
time,
Lillard.
Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum,
And then Luca.
there's just so many good guards in the West at the moment. If they were to completely do away with that sort of like
The picky
taking
team.
a certain amount from the West and taking a certain amount from the East, which is kind of how the voting sort of ends up anyway, you would see him in there. But he would have to have a fantastic season. Let's be honest, it's been a great 2 games, but can he do this over 41 games to get into the All-Star game?
Do you think the Nuggets are going to win this series?
Oh, it looks unlikely. It really does. I think they've really struggled from the guard position outside of Jamal Murray. So Gary Harris hasn't played, obviously with the injury concerns. So I feel like they're really missing him. And Michael Porter Jr. is a defensive liability. I know he's only young and defense can be learned, but I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but he is getting scored on constantly. Whoever is playing up against him is just taking him to the bucket.
Yeah, because he had that at the start of the bubble, he was on fire, and there was so much hype around him, saying that he could potentially be the number 1 go-to guy in the Nuggets in the future.
Yeah, he was, and he can get a shot really easily. But this goes back to the Harden complex that everyone always talks about. What does it matter if you score 40 if your opposition player scores 42? That's the problem at the end of the day. It's great if he can get really good shots and get a lot of buckets, but he's got to be able to stop his opposition man from scoring as well.
I think this series, Utah versus Denver, will be the one that actually goes to 7 games.
It certainly could, easily.
And then this morning we had the Bucks close out against the Magic after having an upset loss at the start.
Yeah.
And then this just sums up the East, really. I mean, every team apart from the Magic got swept.
Well, that's it. And realistically, the Magic should have been swept. I don't know if the Bucks were just like resting or kicking back in that first game. The Magic just hit him with a little bit of a cheeky shot and got away with a win there, but it should have been a sweep. Finally closing it out. Expected.
There's not really much to say about it because
No, it's not.
it's just what everything predicted, what everyone expected, really. And the one that surprised me the most was actually Heat sweeping the Pacers.
Yeah, like I was really hesitant as a Heat fan. I was sitting there going, this is a team that could come out and play. If Oladipo had played really well, this is a team that could give us a run for our money, especially in the first round. But obviously we were we played well enough to get through with a sweep. And someone who really disappointed me, I just want to point out for Indiana, was Miles Turner. I just thought, especially being the size he has with the shooting range he has, when the undersized rotation that Miami starts with Bam Adebayo at 6'9" starting at the center position, I thought his size and length could have done a little bit more, but he seemed to struggle throughout the series.
Yeah, a contributing factor could have been that Sabonis didn't play.
Oh, it's a huge factor. When you don't have to play a player like Sabonis, obviously Indiana has a lot of injuries with that, but Sabonis would have changed the series without a doubt.
Yeah, I don't know if the outcome would have changed. I still think the Heat would have.
Well, I still
come
think
out
the
on
Heat
top.
would have won, yeah. But I think
They
sweep
may have
is
got a
bit-
game or two.
Well, Nate McMillan gets fired off the back of this.
Yeah,
That's the end. Like, if they don't get swept, do you think he gets fired?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. Larry Bird probably does.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, I think if they win 2 games, I don't think he gets fired.
Yeah, and then Raptors, as expected, swept the Nets.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about who cares. Honestly, who cares? Like, the Nets, it's hard to talk about because that's not the Nets that'll be the Nets next season. You're missing DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. 2 of the, I'd say, top 10 in the NBA at their peak. And KD is by far and away the best scorer we've seen since Kobe. And he's 6'10" or 6'11" and shoots a jumper at 7'4".
Yeah,
Like, you look at that and you go, this team is not the Nets.
no way.
This is a bunch of G League blokes. What's the G League? What's the Nets G League team? The Long Island Nets. This is the Long Island Nets featuring Karis LeVert versus an actually championship caliber team in the Raptors.
Yeah, I think Karis LeVert will be the third. Obviously have the third role. He might even come off the bench.
Yeah, he's 6 man,
Next season.
100% 6 man next year. I think he can do great things off the bench. I assume they're probably going to run with Irving, Dinwiddie. I don't know at the 3 at the moment.
Might be Harris.
Well, I think he might be off
Or
contract
KD.
this season, so
Yeah, depends
could
what they
possibly
do.
be Harris, and then KD at the 4, and either Jared Allen or DeAndre Jordan at the 5.
Yeah, they should have home court advantage. If everyone stays healthy, they'll have home court advantage
Oh,
in the
100%.
playoffs.
That's a solid team. As I said, I feel for the Nets. Obviously, injuries for a year. I'm good for them to be there, but nothing to talk about, really.
That's it. And then another series that we see quite often in the playoffs, Celtics versus Philly. Celtics swept the 76ers.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing for Philadelphia.
It's just sad.
It is really sad.
We've talked about this on this podcast a few times. The process should be here by now. And this is just is it the defining point of the process where you're like, it's over? Is it
It's
over?
not. It's not over yet. Well, the process is over because they're not getting first round. They're not getting the top 2
You're
pick,
not
top
last
3
in the
pick.
league.
You're not winning 15 games, getting the number 1 pick 4 years in a row. So the process is over in that sense.
Well, that's it. But, we've had Brett Brown in there for 7 years now until his firing this season. The process shouldn't have taken 7 years. If this is what...
I feel like the process should have taken 6 or 7 years when you're in the finals.
If you're battling
you
for a
should be-
championship,
yeah,
not getting
that's right.
swept by the
Like,
Celtics in the first round.
And going backwards from last season.
Well, I look at the teams, I should say, in the first round for the East. And I feel like Philly's going to get jumped by all of those next season. Except the Magic, probably. The Nets are certainly going to be better than Philly. Indiana, with Sabonis back, a healthy Oladipo, could really push this Philadelphia team based on what they've been putting on the court. The Raptors are certainly better. The Celtics are certainly better. The Bucks are certainly better. And the Heat seem to be, at this point, a much more deep team.
And the Heat have a lot of young and upcoming players that are really playing well. Tyler
Exactly
Hero,
right.
Kendrick Nunn.
So you look at that and you go, in the East, Philly's going backwards, but I would say Philadelphia has the best 2 players, the best duo in the East by far.
Yeah, that's right.
They might not have the best player. I think obviously Giannis is the best player in the East, but they've got the best duo. And also they're quite a youthful duo. And they've got Tobias Harris as your third option. Like, you can't be getting swept.
You can't be getting swept, but when you're missing your second best player or your first best player, this is a bit of controversy, I guess. But you're missing one of your all stars.
But look at the
I expect them
teams
to win a game.
Look at the teams they're playing. Exactly right. You got Joel Embiid, Al Horford, and Tobias Harris. You got to win a game. If the Magic can win a game with Vucevic, you can win a game with Embiid and Harris.
Because I actually expect the Hawks to be fighting for a playoff spot next season.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think so.
I would be very surprised to see Philly fall out the top 8. I can't see that happening.
Depends what they do in this offseason.
Which leads me to my next question. With Philly getting swept, does this show that Embiid and Simmons are not the problem when playing with each other? Or will we see change in Philly?
So, Baz, we actually got this question last week on Instagram as well. So, shout out to one of our followers at Dennis Gianna, who asked us this question here.
Gianna must be a Giannis fan. I can just feel it. Just got a feeling.
I won't say the full last name because it's very Greek and it's very... he loves Giannis.
See, he picked it.
But anyway.
He's been a Bucks fan since last year. Getting back to the question at hand, with Brett Brown fired, I think personally that you need to give him another year.
You definitely need to give them the opportunity to play with each other next season with a new coach.
That's it. I trust that Elton Brand, who came out and said he won't be making any significant changes in terms of his stars, I expect him to look to better or bolster the role players around Simmons and Embiid and maybe try and find what they lost in someone like JJ Redick, a shooter. Or because you got Josh Richardson as well, who I think is a very solid player. As a Heat fan, I've seen him grow quite into a decent starter. He's more a defensive player, a 3-and-D, but I think he can definitely give you 12 to 15 points a game. And if not, at some nights put up 30. And we've seen that in the bubble or the playoffs.
Because they made some changes compared to last playoffs, and they actually got considerably worse. They got rid of Jimmy Butler. They probably should have offered him the contract instead of Tobias Harris, in my opinion. And then, JJ Redick.
Well, hang on. You're paying Horford the same amount of money you would have been paying Jimmy Butler.
I know.
Why would you? It doesn't make sense.
What's this Alden Brand being Alden Brand?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, how much input? We also wonder how much input Brett Brown had in those decisions. Because that's another thing to note with Brett Brown
Enough
gone.
input to get you fired.
Well, that's it. Is Elton
You
Brand...
forget that he was there for 7 years. I'm very surprised that he actually had 7 years coaching the basketball team.
Especially for a big market team like Philadelphia 76ers. He shouldn't have been given that long, to be fair. He should have been fired 2 years ago. But realistically, they need to make, in my opinion, one big change, and that's they've got to move Horford on. And I know people out there are going to be like, who's going to take Horford? Who's going to do this? You might have to give up picks with Horford and just get rid of him. Because that salary is a stinker. He's 33 years of age off the top of my head. He played horrendously, and he's clogging the middle.
Yeah, Choc can probably confirm this for us, but I think he's probably getting paid around 20 million.
I think he's
for
more
the
than
next
that.
2 or 3.
I think he's like 27 million or something stupid.
Surely not.
I feel like
27
he is.
million.
So
Tobias Harris on 27
His
million.
total 4-year contract is worth $109 million.
So that's,
Quick maths, 25.6 million.
Yeah, you're probably on that.
that's
and,
the 27 million mark, isn't it?
and you
25
know,
26 point something.
Yeah.
he's on 97 million guaranteed.
Oh, that hurts.
That is rubbish.
I want to be Al Horford's manager. That is a highway robbery. How he got
And
that
Tobias
contract.
Harris has been on 27 million a year.
So you got 4 guys. Oh, sorry, and Simmons will still be on his rookie contract, I believe, off the top of my head. So you got 3 guys who are on 20-something million plus a season, and Simmons, who's going to be due that 20+ million.
Simmons will starts getting paid 20+ million next season.
Baz, just so you know, quick maths ready. Tobias Harris, 5 years, 180 million.
Oh,
36 million a year.
I mean, obviously we're going to see inflation in the
disgusting.
salary cap, which will assist with this sort of stuff. But they can't have bought as if they're ready to pay luxury tax money, but they ain't playing luxury tax basketball.
Yeah.
So
Or making luxury tax playoffs.
that's it. So you've got to see a change, and it has to be Al Horford. But again, who's going to take him? What are you going to get back in return? You might just have to dump a bunch of picks on top of that salary just so you can clear the cap space to use that to turn it into something else. You can play Simmons, Richardson, Harris, Embiid, and then just find someone like a Derek Favors, a Paul Millsap, because Paul Millsap's off his contract this season.
Yeah.
Someone
Same
for
with Gallinari.
Gallinari, someone for that $10 to $15 million range, rather than paying Al Horford $27 million. You can get someone to do it for $10 to $15 million, what he's been doing, producing this season.
And that they might entertain offers for Tobias Harris as well.
I like Tobias Harris. I keep him.
You don't like him for 36 million a season.
Fair point. But again, who's going to take him for $36 million?
The Chicago Bulls.
The Chicago? Okay, what are they giving up?
Zach LaVine.
Why?
Because then they just have Kobe White come through at point guard. Then they draft someone at 4 at point guard. Then they get Philly's picks.
So what do you get? Okay, so assuming that they get rid of Zach LaVine, you keep Kobe White at the guard spot. You're going to draft who at number 4 though?
Tyrese Halliburton.
So you're going to draft another guard. So you're going to play those 2, and then you have Tobias at the 3, Lauri Markkanen at the...
Nah, I play Otto Porter at the 3, and then Tobias Harris at the 4, and then Wendell Carter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen at the 5.
It's not a bad team.
It's better than
It'll get you 9th in the East.
That will get you 8th in the East.
Are you sure?
Am I sure?
So you're
what?
saying that they're
Am I
going
sure what?
to... You think that's a better team than the Magic?
Yeah.
You reckon?
Yes.
I'm intrigued. There's a lot of young players there. You're expecting young players to play as veterans. Otto Porter Jr.'s at 24. Lauri Markkanen's 23. Kobe White's 20.
Do you know how much money
21.
Otto Porter Jr.'s on?
Please tell me it's sub 20. It has to be.
22.
Credit to the managers out in the NBA. I just want to put that out there. They're working very hard, getting their clients a lot of money. But yeah, going back to the question at hand, there needs to be, in my opinion, some change. It doesn't have to be drastic as in Embiid or Simmons. I think you give them another year together. But it has to be something around getting better role players, better depth, and moving on someone like Horford or Harris, and trying to find the best lineup that assists what the Philly 76ers have, which is a guard that can't shoot and a dominant big man. Maybe you move Simmons off the ball, move him to a power forward spot, that point forward spot, the way LeBron kind of plays it.
That's what the new coach. I feel like that's the philosophy they will have moving forward.
Play him at the 4, because he obviously we know he's a solid rebounder. He's big enough body to be able to play with some of the 4 men in the league, and then you actually commit to having someone else play, similar to what they tried with Shaq Milton. But you need a better talent at the 1 spot.
Yeah, and they need some they need to surround Ben with shooters, which is why you saw the dip in performance with Ben and Embiid compared to the season before, because they got rid of their shooters.
Yeah, Embiid's getting double teamed in a post, and he's got a semi-decent pass out of the post. I think he's nowhere near as good as the Joker, but he can definitely find the right man when he wants to. So I think you need to surround those 2 guys with shooters, because people collapse to them. Either of them go to the basket, someone has to be open, and JJ Redick absolutely dominated that role for them.
Do you think Ben Simmons could be the second coming of Giannis?
It's
He's
hard.
got the skill set.
He does, but he's not as athletic
Yeah,
as Giannis.
because Giannis is freakishly athletic.
Unbelievably athletic. I think as
He does that Euro step dunk like 3 times a game.
he's the most athletic person since young LeBron. He gets a rebound, and before you even had a chance to jump, he's already dunked it on you. He has an unbelievable athleticism that Ben Simmons doesn't have. Ben Simmons has a better mind for the game.
Yeah, he's better handling the ball as well.
Exactly right. And he can see things, I think, better than Giannis. Sometimes Giannis goes too bull in a china shop and picks up a charge or makes a silly play and throws the ball away. Simmons doesn't tend to do that as much. But they're similar play in the sense that neither of them have got a dominant shot. Obviously, Giannis has worked on his a lot more than Simmons. But I think if Simmons can work on that shot a little bit more, that at least that it's a threat that it's going to go in. Don't need him shooting over 30%. But if he can shoot that 25 to 30% range, at least you're like, he could shoot, I need to step out, which will help him be much better because obviously pump fake, go to the basket and find the open man or get a nice layup or dunk at the rim.
Yeah, because I think Ben Simmons is more than capable of averaging a triple-double a season or very close to
Oh,
triple-double
unbelievable.
numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he's one of those guys, he can easily get you 15 to 20 and then 10 rebounds and 9, 10 assists every single night. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of whether you can find someone to play alongside that. And it could possibly be maybe someone like a Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy who can control the ball and score at will if he needs to, but can also play off the ball. And I think that's the kind of point guard they need to go for. Someone who can play with the ball in hand and someone who can play without the ball in hand. Obviously, I don't know how they get someone like Spencer Dinwiddie, but a player like
the type
that.
of player they need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That to me is the type of player they need.
All right. Speaking of trades, this is going to be very interesting to talk about.
Spicy.
So with how Luka is playing at the moment, he's going to have a very bright future ahead of him. Going to be probably one of the best players in the NBA, or the best player in the NBA in years moving forward. The trade involving him and Trae Young and draft night, do you think that will go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history? I know it's early days, and we don't really have... Trey Bay hasn't had much of an opportunity to do much.
No.
With how things are going.
No, this shouldn't be a question. I'm upset that this is a
I'm
question.
upset.
So just an FYI for all those listening, on the draft day in 2018, the Atlanta Hawks selected Luka Doncic, and then they sent Luka to Dallas in exchange for Trae Young and a 2019 first-round pick.
Who was the 2019 first-round pick?
Before we address it, well, yeah, bring that up. But before we address that, can we talk about Vlade Divac ruining the Kings, going with Marvin the Bags Bagley instead of going for Doncic? That's not a trade, but that's a bad pick. That's a bad miss. But no, this trade is...
Sorry, the 2019 pick for the Atlanta Hawks would either have been DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish.
Cam Reddish.
There you go.
I still think Cam Reddish can be a solid player. I think he's still young, but he can definitely score.
He can score.
He lit it up in high school, and I think he made the mistake of going to Duke and being the third fiddle. He should have gone on his own and showed what he could do.
I think it would have been very... If he had played for like North Carolina or Michigan, I think his college career would have been very different.
Exactly right. I think he wanted to be part of that big three they had at Duke and wanted to run their way all the way to the championship, but obviously the season didn't quite work out the way they wanted it. But I think he's still a very solid player. So, but going back to the question at hand, no, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
This is not the worst trade in NBA history.
Yet.
And I've got... There will definitely be some shockers. But I've got 4 trades that are worse, firstly. But before I get to that, I want to bring up the point that I don't ever consider draft day trades between draft picks, like between players who were drafted that draft, worse than straight player swaps or player for player swaps.
Yeah, but this is a bit different though because the Atlanta Hawks had already drafted Luka Doncic. They hadn't swapped picks before, so the Atlanta Hawks knew what they were getting in Luka Doncic.
Yeah, correct. But I think also draft day trades of rookies who've never played a game, who realistically you're looking at, especially in this situation, a European player who was playing solid minutes but has not overly established a long career compared to Trae Young, who had a really good college career as well. I think it's a hard one to go, oh, that's a shocking pick. When you look at it, you go, they're comparable somewhat in talent, and they're both still really young.
They'll get compared the whole career.
Of
Luka
course.
Doncic playing at Real Madrid. Hala Madrid.
They'll unfairly get compared their whole career, not because of anything that they do. I think they'll both be really good players. I think Trae Young can be a perennial all-star. I think he's...
Maybe the next Steph Curry.
He could be, yeah. He's a good enough shooter to be. Obviously, he has to put on a bit of weight, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Going to the basket, and he seems to struggle finishing quite a little bit. But I just think it's hard to compare 2 guys drafted that are traded for each other in the draft because they've not had a big chance to show what they can do in the NBA, because we know the NBA is a completely different animal to any other sort of basketball league in the world.
Sure.
But getting to the trades...
Apologies for my interruption. I'll let you go.
Let me ramble. The first one I have, And this is around Choc, Charles Barkley.
You ain't no Charles Barkley.
You don't call him Championship Choc.
That's it. 76ers, and Charles Barkley did want out. I want to put that out there. He did want to leave. He did request a trade, but the 76ers sent Charles Barkley to the Suns for Jeff. I think he's Portland Trail Blazers head coach. Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. Of those names, take away Hornacek being a coach currently. You ever heard of anyone else?
Who?
Tim Perry. I know Jeff Hornacek isn't a coach.
I think Jeff Hornacek's a coach.
I don't think so.
Choc, get on that.
I'm on it, boys. I'm on it. 1 second.
But the reason I bring this trade up is you had a perennial all-star in Choc traded for 3 role players. And then he was only 28. And they got poor draft consideration in return. And they combined for 6 unforgettable years in Philadelphia in which the 76ers never reached the playoffs. And you know what Chuck did on the back end? That next season after being traded, he won an MVP and led Phoenix to the finals, only to be done by the Bulls.
So Jeff Hornacek, the last team that he did coach in 2016 to 2018 was New York Knicks.
New York Knicks.
Since then, he has not had a
I
job.
don't think he wants that on his resume.
But that's a horrendous trade.
That's a pretty bad trade.
That's all you've got for me? That's a pretty bad trade.
Well, I wouldn't be trading. I wouldn't be trading Charles
They
Barkley.
had 6 years of lottery picks, and he went on to win an MVP and only lose to the Chicago Bulls in the finals with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Oh, no, that's just a fine trade. Come on, man.
It's a bad trade, but I wouldn't be trading Charles Barkley. Yeah, it's a bad trade.
It's a
It's
bad
terrible trade. But I feel like the 76ers are always going to be forgettable years in Philadelphia.
Do you still think, though, that is that worse or better than Luka?
It's hard to tell.
Oh, no, I'm done with you. I'm moving on to the next one. Back in 1980, Cleveland Cavaliers and Los Angeles Lakers made a trade that appeared to be of little consequence at the time. The Cavs traded Butch Lee and a 1982 first-round pick to the Lakers in exchange for Don Ford and a 1980 first-rounder. The deal was all but forgotten in the annals of history.
Annals of history.
Until that 82 pick the Lakers received turned into the first overall pick and just a man that we all seem to know, James Worthy. Future Hall of Famer, 3-time championship winner, and a 12-year career in the NBA. That's gotta hurt. That's gotta
hurt.
Like, that's a bad trade.
Cleveland.
This is for you. And I'm going to stay on the Lakers bandwagon and hit you up with another one. This one is this is stanky. This is downright unfair. Another one. Lakers picked up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from the Milwaukee Bucks in a deal that he was averaging the year before 30 points per game, 14 rebounds, and 3.3 blocks. In return, they got Junior Bridgman, Dave Myers, and Elmore Smith. Yeah. Who? Exactly. And then from there, Abdul-Jabbar, as we all know, went on to play 14 more years and secure 5 more championships for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Clanging those rings.
He's clanging. That's a bad trade. I think that is for me just highway robbery. That's extremely terrible. And then my final trade, one that as a bit of a younger fan I know very well, was 2 trades really. The Nets traded Mehmet Okur, your man, Mehmet, Sean Williams, worst head in the NBA. Since Sheldon Williams. What's with all the Williams having some bad heads? And a 2012 first-round pick, which turns out to be Damian Lillard, to Portland. Brooklyn then sends Gerald Wallace.
The New Jersey Nets.
The New Jersey Nets at the time.
Yeah.
Wallace, Keith Bogans, Marshawn Brooks, Chris Humphries, and 3, count it, 3, 1, 2, 3, first-round picks to the Celtics for Kevin Garnett at 36 years of age, Paul Pierce, I think he was 33, a 95-year-old Jason Terry, and DJ White. The Nets went from having won 49 games before the trade to then only winning 44. That's bad. That's a bad trade. And it ruined what would become the Brooklyn Nets for years to come. Next season might be the first time they've recovered since that trade. That's horrendous.
And the only reason why you know one of those players is because he dated Kim Kardashian. The
that's
rest
it.
of them are like, who?
Chris Humphries was okay on the rebound. nuts.
You can't even say it with a straight face.
He
You're
was
like,
though.
oh, he's
He was.
okay.
He actually, he was at power forward.
He
was
wasn't too
Marshawn
bad.
Brooks, like,
But let's be
he
honest,
had 1-2 good years, and he was gone.
the average human being on the planet knows Chris Humphries not because of his rebounds, but because he was married to Kim Kardashian for about a week. But I'm looking at Baz here. He's just got this puzzled look of this.
Because I'm trying to figure out. You've got three first round picks to the Celtics for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry.
Yeah.
But Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce moved to the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. So they've traded them from the Celtics to the Nets. The Nets gave up 3 first round picks to the Celtics.
Okay, so these are 2 different trades.
2 different trades.
Yeah, you threw me off.
That happened at the same time. Well, sorry, that happened
they don't
within the same season. So during the season to the off season, that created that net shit show that was Deron Williams, Jason Terry, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't 2000. It might have been 2012 actually.
It's 2012, 2013 season.
Yeah, because they made the that must have been the year they changed to the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, because they had Andre Kirilenko as well.
Yeah,
because
that would have been the year they changed to Brooklyn Nets. Because in 2013 they made the playoffs as the 5th or the 6th seed, and they got beat by the Heat.
Yep.
And I think they won once.
That's it. And that was and Derek Favors in return
it's coming back to me now.
went to the Utah Jazz. So you look at that, it ruined the Nets. The Nets had no picks. This is just after, remember that Russian owner came in and purchased it. Choc, find out who the Russian owner of that Nets is. He came in and he wanted to make a splash quick.
Yeah, I remember this. And
And
then the Celtics actually with these picks picked up Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Mikhail Dmitrovich Prokhorov.
Straight out of Moscow.
That bloke came in and
I remember now.
he
I
wanted to
remember.
blow everything up and he
Yeah.
tried to rule the NBA.
It just
And
threw me off because I couldn't remember if they were the New Jersey Nets at this time or the Brooklyn Nets.
I think this is either the first or first
I think that was the year they just changed over to the Brooklyn
I'm
Nets.
pretty sure Jason Kidd is the head coach at that time. Can you find that out, Chuck? I'm pretty sure Jason Kidd takes over as the head coach.
Chuck's getting his money's worth today.
That's
Mate,
it.
I'm working out.
working hard.
All right, so Jason Kidd was a coach of the Nets 2013-2014, which was the season that they changed over to
Yeah.
the Brooklyn.
So they made the trade. Sorry, you're right. There are 2 trades, but they made the trade the season before with the Utah Jazz, receiving Deron Williams and Mehmet Okur and Andre Kirilenko and shipping out Derek Favors.
That was to Portland.
That was to Portland,
Yeah.
and the 2012 pick, which is Damian Lillard, to Portland.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Then they followed it up in the off season, picking up Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, and DJ White, which is how that Brooklyn Nets, that first year of the Brooklyn Nets team was Deron Williams, Jason Terry, Brook Lopez, although very young Brook Lopez,
Paul Pierce, KG.
Paul Pierce, and KG. All of them over 35, except for, I think, Deron Williams. I think he was younger than that. I think he was like 31.
And he was still getting paid up until recently, actually.
Yeah, that's it. And that was the shit show that was that Nets. And they went backwards from the roster they had the year before. That is, in my opinion, the worst trade in NBA history.
That was more to make a stamp on this is the Brooklyn Nets. We got stars playing for us and to get people to games.
I hope so, because on court they were horrendous. Let's hope their marketability was solid.
And that was the year they moved to that new arena in Brooklyn. What's it called?
Barclays Center.
Barclays
Yeah,
Center,
they
thank
moved
you.
the Barclays Center. I think Jay-Z was the owner at the time.
Yeah, Jay-Z was owner,
Part
that's
owner
right.
at the
So
time. And then
it had a lot of star power.
That's it. And then they just didn't perform on the court. But that is the worst trade, in my opinion, in NBA history.
I remember that killed the Nets for
They haven't recovered until now. Yeah, they haven't recovered till now. So that's why I think that's the worst trade.
Because sorry to interrupt, that pick, the Celtics got that pick and it's actually the number 1 pick. Because they actually made
number
they
2
made
pick.
1 or 2.
2. I think it was 2 because
They made like the Eastern Conference Finals or something.
Yeah.
Well, they went far in the playoffs. I don't know if it was the Eastern Conference Finals, but they made the playoffs, and I'm pretty sure they won a series. And then they actually had a draft pick high, which was the Nets draft pick.
Yeah,
and
which
eventually Jason Tatum.
Which I think they turned into Jason Tatum. So when I look at what happened, and it's 2 trades, but what basically happened in that year and a half of poor trading by the Nets, that's why it's the worst trade, because they became worse, gave great players to other teams, and then financially and on court ruined themselves up until what will probably be next season. That's why it's worse than the Luka and Trey pick. Luka and Trey will be considered or looked at for the rest of their careers because of how talented they're both going to be. But in terms of trades, that Nets one's the worst in history.
That next one stinks.
If I could drop this mic, I would drop the mic on that.
I'm out of here.
That's it.
Yeah, like that one. That stinks.
So you know you're wrong now. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was also side note. What turned out to be a bad trade, but at the time wasn't as bad. The Kobe Bryant trade on draft night to send him. That's obviously turned out to be a very poor trade. But again, this is why I don't try to judge draft day trades between rookies, because yes, you can do all the scouting in the world. You can see this player is going to be this player is going to be that. But that's a very hard thing to be held accountable this early on in the careers of Luka and Trey. Yes, they're both really talented. Yes, Luka's playing probably better and seems to be a more talented player than Trey. But it's not like you're talking about LeBron James and say, who's a scrub? Delonte West. Like, there's not that much of a gap between the two of them.
Who was a scrub on that Cleveland team, mate? Danny Bobby, Bobblehead Gibson.
Oh, that's it.
Drew Gooden was the next highest scoring player on that team.
Hey, Drew Gooden has a solid beard.
Yeah,
But yeah.
great patch on the back of his head as well.
But that's the thing. Like, we're not talking about two players who are right now so far away in terms of talent and where they're ranking. We're talking about guys who are pretty similar. So I don't think it's fair to compare the two this soon. Give them another 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years. When Lucas won 5 MVPs.
And that segment is why Baz is wrong, and he's feeding into the fact that Luka is the future face of the NBA.
All right. Question time. We have more questions from the free agents fans.
Yes, so from user at Serge Hallis, big shout out. What is the best NBA player rivalry so far in the 2019-20 playoffs?
It's going to have to be Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell going back and forth. You know, you mentioned it earlier. Jamal Murray's 90-plus points, 0 turnovers in the last 2 games. Scoring 45 and 50.
Yeah. 42
and 50.
and 42 last game, 50 the game before.
And it's not like Donovan Mitchell's been playing poorly either.
Yeah.
Haven't he put up 3 50-point games already?
Yeah, I don't think it's 350 games. But
Choc will get there. Hold on, I'll get it.
He's put up some serious numbers.
He put up 50 plus.
57 in game 1, 51 in game 4. Every other game he's put up about 30 or 20 points.
Oh, so bad. Horrendous. But
that game, him and Jamal, that's right. Jamal Murray put up 50 instead of Donovan Mitchell.
There was 2 minutes there in the fourth quarter where it was Jamal Murray going one-on-one with Donovan. Some step backs were hit. Some drawing was happening. People were letting people know.
Yeah, it was good to watch.
And it wasn't. It was on court heated. It wasn't any sort of. There's no malice in anything. It was just 2 great basketball players right now cooking.
Because you saw in the game before when Jamal Murray was like having a joke at Donovan Mitchell saying like we just played each other now. Got to see this guy around the pool.
The joys of the bubble. You get to see the bloke that just put 57 on you sitting around the pool.
So just on that game 4, for example, Donovan Mitchell shot 55% from field goal range.
That's
Jamal Murray 58%. So they're literally on par with each other.
They're both playing really, really well. But and I mean, going back to the question at hand, there's no one else. The only other one, and this is not a player rivalry, it's a player versus team rivalry, is Luka against the Eclipse. That kid is not backing down whatsoever.
No.
That white boy ain't backing down from anyone in that roster. And you've got some seriously solid defensive players in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and he's going at them with everything he's got on bum ankles. He's trying to do it all. And he's put a scare into that team.
Marcus Morris is an asshole.
Yeah, he's stepping on people's ankles around here.
But you got 4,700
allegedly.
feet, 4,700 square feet of space on that court, and you happen to step right on his ankle.
And I think the way Luka has handled himself in such a heated series is also credit to him. I think he came out and said, he's like, I hope he didn't do it intentionally.
On purpose.
Yeah. But
instead of causing a ruckus, he did it. Oh, I'm going to get a next game. You see me there.
Yeah, that's it. So I feel like, that's the difference between, I think, someone like Luka and then someone like Pat Beverly. Luka's a professional. He's done this before. He's a star. He knows he doesn't have to run his mouth. He does his talking on the court. I'd like to see him maybe get a little bit less. I feel like he's having a little bit of a go at the refs a little bit too much and just playing his game. But again, it must be frustrating. You've got Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Montrezl Harrell. Like, there's such a stacked roster of the Clippers against Luka Doncic featuring
the Mavericks.
Yeah,
like there's no KP anymore, so it's Luka Doncic.
Just Luka Doncic and Tim Hardaway Jr. is trying to help him along the way. But yeah, it's basically that roster all just focusing on Luka Doncic. It's like under 10s when you got that one kid and you're like doubling him from.
Completely forget that Trey Burke and Hardaway played with each other in college.
Yeah,
in Michigan.
He's still wearing that jersey, man. I'm guaranteeing he's still
I
wearing that
reckon
jersey.
it's like, hold up, Tim, you need to wear this as well.
But yeah,
And then get Glenn Robinson the third on there. They had the big three.
Glenn Robinson the third. What a roster. But yeah, that's the thing. That's the only other rivalry I can see. I don't think there's anyone else that sort of like had the spice though, that, as you said earlier,
not yet.
Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray have had.
Yeah, you might see when I feel like the Rockets are going to wrap up the season, rack up the series against OKC, and then they play the Lakers next.
You might see it in some of the future, like as we get closer into towards the finals and the better teams start to play each other, ones with more stars. You might see something come out, maybe out of that Houston Rockets, Lakers sort of thing. You might see someone have a go at Adams, like PJ Tucker loves to get up and in people, but I just don't see anything as nice as what I've been seeing out of the rivalry between Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. Okay, fellas, the round 2 of the playoffs begins soon. I think it's next Thursday or Friday. We should all know who's playing who. What's your game of the week?
Riggy.
Mate, I'm going to go Raps Celt. I think this is going to be one hell of a series. Could possibly go Game 7. I think the Raptors are just going to come out on top. I think it's just championship pedigree is probably what's going to push them over the top here, even though Tatum's playing really well. I just think being there, done that, most complete team in the East. I just think they're going to get over the top with their experience, but that is the game that I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of action in that game. It's going to be very close as well.
I think the Lakers are definitely going to wrap it up today, and I think if the Rockets wrap up the series as well, I think the Lakers and Rockets is going to be a really, really good matchup. Like you said before, Baz, should be good to see. The small ball of the Rockets go up against the Lakers with their big men of
3 7-footers they got.
Yeah, they got a big team, so it should be pretty interesting, and I'll be interested to see how LeBron puts the team on his back.
As a wise man once said, it'll be interesting to see. All right, cheers, lads. Thanks again for joining us. We're coming to the end of the first round and start the second round of the playoffs. It's all heating up. Join us next week as we cover off more NBA playoff content.
Thanks, man.
See you.